Everyone, welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with my rant stroke thought of the day, and it's all about a former centre forward of ours. That's right, Alexander Isak is severely injured. Now, I'm not going to laugh. I know a few Newcastle fans have been laughing. That's the whole point of me recording this video. I'm going to get stuck right into that in a second and talk about the backlash that some of the Newcastle fans have had because of the reaction and why I don't think it's unjustified, but why I think it may be a little bit over the top. But we'll get stuck into that in a second. Just before I do, a little reminder, if you haven't already, smash subscribe, help join the 13,000 subscriber mark. That's where we want to get to next. We're 12,000 for Christmas. Thank you so much, you wonderful people. We gave away the £12,000 prize. I posted it today, so we'll be with the lucky winner in the next few days, hopefully before Christmas time. But help gets to 13,000, guys. It's all free content on Evermore. Don't need to pay a penny if you want to be a member. There is options below to help support the channel. So let's get stuck in. What is the problem and what is going on in the world of Alexander Isak and Newcastle United and Newcastle United fans? Well, if you didn't know already, Alexander Isak looks like he's going to have a broken leg, and it was following this challenge in the game against Spurs where he actually scored his second league goal in only 10 Premier League appearances for Liverpool this season. And it was his old mate Vicky van de Ven, who you remember used to put in his arse several times when he was in a black and white shirt, back when he could score loads of goals and he wasn't shit, like a lot of Liverpool fans were saying before he got injured. And yes, you were. Before you start giving me shit in the comments, you were questioning him. I saw Liverpool fans saying if he doesn't pick up by the new year, we might have to sell him. You know, I've seen some pundits talking about that as well, and content creators. So all of a sudden now, because he's broke his leg potentially, it's the Newcastle fans who are getting attacked. We'll get into that in a minute. So as you probably saw these images, Alexander Isak was walking off, to be fair. So thankfully for him, as a professional footballer, maybe wasn't as bad of an injury as it could have been. But he was walking off with the physios. But the early signs is that he could have a leg break, and that would pretty much be his season over and done with. And his season, by the way, in case you want a little bit reminding about that, 10 Premier League appearances, 2 goals, 5 Champions League appearances, no goals, no assists, and in the EFL Cup, 1 goal and 1 assist. Beg your pardon, 1 appearance, 1 goal. He got 1 assist in the Premier League as well. I've robbed him there. So all in all, £125 million, 16 appearances, 3 goals, and 1 appearance. And just to put that into context, Johan Visser has had 1 start and scored 1 goal. Now we'll talk about Visser because I'm going to get stuck into the backlash from Newcastle fans in a minute and the reaction from other people, Liverpool fans in particular, and some content creators as well. I saw an Aston Villa kid. I was trying to find the video again. I don't know if he's took it down, but he was calling us a vile fan base. That's quite rich coming from the Aston Villa fans who decided to mug us off for years when we got relegated to Villa Parkers and just creating a weird rivalry between them and Newcastle fans. I never bought into it. One of my good mates is an Aston Villa fan, and I like Villa fans. I've got no problem with them, but some Villa fans absolutely despise Newcastle. I'm forever seeing things on TikTok algorithms of them saying, who's the worst fan base? And they go, oh, I think it's Newcastle. It's really not Newcastle at all. There's loads of worse fan bases than us. Manchester United and Arsenal for starters, and Liverpool this summer were grotesque the way they went on. But it's okay for them to burn shirts about Trent Alexander-Arnold, graffiti murals as well of Trent Alexander-Arnold, a kid who was with him from when he was 8 years old, probably sending him fucking death threats and all sorts of shit. It's okay for them to behave like that. But for Newcastle fans to be a little bit happy Alexander Isak's having a shit season is deemed as petty. And then obviously now he's injured. Newcastle fans aren't very concerned about it, and rightly so, I think, in my opinion, the way Alexander Isak treated Newcastle. I'll come back to that in a second. But one of the chief antagonists, I think, for Newcastle fans over the summer transfer window was certainly the Scousers or the E-Scousers. And there was nobody bigger than this fucking melt, if you remember him, Mr. Tom Thumb himself, Anfield Agenda. That's just a little clip of him saying, dear Newcastle fans, if you remember, he lifted his head in that creepy manner and then waved like he should be on a register. But before this guy is off to split a bottle of wine with his brother Gomez and cousin It for fucking Christmas dinner, he's decided to come out on his TikTok and his YouTube and all that and slag off Newcastle fans and say that all he's seen is Newcastle fans, acting classless and all that stuff, because Alexander Isak's injured. Now, I don't disagree with some of that in many ways. I don't think we need to rejoice the fact that the guy's badly hurt himself, because this is a professional footballer. This is a bloke, a human being at the end of the day. Nobody should really want anyone to get hurt, to that extent in terms of breaking a leg and all that kind of stuff. But the fact that they absolutely took the fucking piss out of Newcastle United and the fan base, like way beyond levels of banter and all that, in my opinion, in the summer, way beyond levels. The arrogance and the disdain from this fan base and motherfuckers like him in particular was absolutely horrific. It really, really was. It was getting to the point where it was abusive, really, to Newcastle fans and Newcastle as a club. Nobody could see Newcastle's point of view. He throws up the Johan Visser thing and all that, right? Listen, you tell me there's not Brentford fans out there being chuckling to themselves that Visser blew his knee out and he was out for the whole fucking season after we paid massively over the odds for that guy, 100%. That is exactly what they were doing. They may not go on social media and do it, or you haven't seen them, Uncle Fester, talking about it, but I guarantee you some Brentford fans have been smiling, and rightly fucking so, because the way Visser behaved, and most Newcastle fans with the commodity of brains or common sense would half agree with that statement, that they didn't like the way Visser went on either. Now, there was slight differences between Visser and Alexander Isak to the point where Visser did come back and train with his teammate. Alexander Isak didn't. Visser did put out a really respectful, classy statement about his time at Brentford the minute the transfer was agreed. Alexander Isak stayed silent, absolutely fucking silent. And then later on in the day, one of his people, which is clear what it was, knocked up a little montage with a few little words about, you know, what a great adventure we had together, Newcastle and all that stuff, and the bit of winning the Carabao Cup and everything else. And he only did that, or they only did that because of the shit that he was getting online, because he said fuck all. He got interviewed in his press conference release at Anfield like a fucking robot. He made the Prime Minister look like a fun guy at a party. That's what he was. He was like an android. There was no emotion. There was no mention of Newcastle United, no mention of Eddie Howe, no mention of his teammates, no mention of the great supporters who idolise this bloke, by the way. This is exactly why the Newcastle fans are fucking upset about this whole situation, is because they idolize this man. They put him up on a pedestal like he was a fucking god, you know, and rightly or wrongly, that's exactly why they're pissed off, these Newcastle fans. There's absolutely no doubt about that in my mind, that they're pissed off about that, because the guy treated them like shit. You know, the Anfield Agenda guy says, oh, you know, Newcastle fans are a joke. They're treating him like he's an ex-girlfriend or something like that. He was more than that to these Newcastle fans. He was an absolute fucking god. You know, and when they were trying to, you know, hope he would stay and convince him to stay and all that other stuff, and you know, they were worried about his contract, and there was talk about his contract and some concerns that he may be looking elsewhere and everything else. You know, what they did is they showed the love to this man, you know, especially the likes of War Flags in particular, who, you know, did a massive display for the guy. You know, you can see it right there on the screen. That kind of a thing is what they did for Alexander Isak, you know, and you don't get that in many clubs around the world. You don't get that kind of adulation. You don't get that kind of worship from a fan base. And Newcastle United are a dedicated fan base. And Alexander Isak just stuck his middle fingers up at that. He didn't give a fuck about the fan base. He didn't give a fuck about little Timmy or little fucking Samantha, who had Alexander Isak shirts on, waiting outside the ground, you know, for his autograph, when he sped in, sped out with his hood up, knowing that he was a fucking arsehole, knowing that he spat in the face of Eddie Howe and he spat in the face of his teammates and the supporters who idolized him for the last 3 years. And 3 years, by the way, where he had niggles and he had knocks and he had injuries and he was in and he was out, you know. Yes, he was a brilliant footballer, and yes, he scored loads of goals. But you can see since he's gone to Liverpool, I mean, even Arne Slot turned around and said that Liverpool don't have players to feed him the ball. You know, and I'm not saying Jacob Murphy's the best player in the world. Fuck me. If you watch my channel for any commodity time, you'll realize I haven't said that. But Alexander Isak thrived on service from Newcastle United. You know, was he a great finisher? Yes. Will he get back to being a great finisher? He probably will be. There's no doubt about that at all. But it was his teammates that fed him and gave him the chances to score goals. He wasn't Lionel Messi. He didn't get the ball and skin 9 players and smash it in the top corner. The one time he probably did that was the Everton goal for Murphy, when he actually squared it to Murphy and he scored the goal. But Alexander Isak's lack of respect, lack of appreciation, and lack of class when he left this football club left a sour taste in the mouths of these Newcastle United fans. It doesn't matter whether they're old, young, or in the middle. These Newcastle United fans were massively let down by this lad, disgusted with his behaviour, disrespected the whole football club. And the Liverpool fans were just as bad in the summer, calling us little small club and all that. I've seen some of them posting saying, oh, Newcastle, you know, laughing at Isak's injuries, a small club mentality. You spent the whole summer calling us a small club. So what are you talking about? You're even fucking, you know, doing your own words over there. You think we're a small club, then we'll act like a fucking small club. But I don't think it's right to praise or cheer the fact that a guy's hurt. I don't think that's right. But, you know, is it understandable from the Newcastle fan base? Of course it is, because they're pissed off. And They want nothing more than for this guy's move to Liverpool to be as shit as it's been and continue to be as shit as it's been. I mean, forget the injury for a second. The reason that the guy has been so fucking bad at Liverpool, right? Let's get it right. Us Newcastle fans, don't kid ourselves on, right? Liverpool is a level above us in terms of a football club, in terms of playing squad, in terms of the trophies they're going for and all that. We know that as Newcastle fans. You Liverpool fans try and tell us we don't know because you don't understand us. We do know that as a football club, right? We knew Alexander Isak was going to a bigger club than Newcastle, right? We all knew that, right? But the way he went about it was disgraceful. If Alexander Isak had done the right thing and put in a transfer request and went to pre-season and played in a game or two, fucking 30 minutes there, 30 minutes here, and then moved to Liverpool and said, right, listen, I've had a wonderful time at Newcastle. It'll forever be in my heart. Love the Geordies, love Eddie Howe and my teammates, but I can't pass up a great opportunity like this. We'd have been absolutely fine with them. We'd have said, you know what, Alex, fucking good luck to your son. Thanks for the memories. Fucking class. You'll never want for a pint in Newcastle. They wouldn't serve him a pint of piss in Newcastle now. But they probably would. They probably put it over his fucking head, probably. But that's the difference between being classy and not being classy. And the reason that Alexander Isak behaved that way, arrogance. Unadulterated fucking arrogance of the lad. And that's why he behaved the way that he did. And not only was he arrogant, he was stupid as well, because he thought he could be the player that he is, that explosive player with all that pace and all of that ability with zero pre-season in his body, going over to Spain, training with his ex-fucking team in Real Sociedad. Never told Eddie Howe that. I heard some shit over the summer. I don't go on and talk about these things when people tell me because I don't want to get the person who told me in trouble, but I can fucking say it now. He was told to stay in the house by Eddie Howe. He was told to stay in the house by Eddie Howe, keep a low profile, stay out the public eye, all that kind of stuff. And then as soon as Eddie Howe went on that plane with his teammates or former teammates that he wanted them to be over to pre-season, this shithouse jumped on a plane and went to Spain to train in Real Sociedad in the sunshine, half-arse training. When he was training at Newcastle, he was doing half-arse training. He couldn't be bothered. I heard that as well. The coaches were saying he was a disgrace. He couldn't be bothered. He didn't want to run. He didn't want to shoot. He didn't want to pass because he didn't want to be at that football club, right? Now, I understand if Isak wanted to leave, right? But Liverpool are now paying the price because his unprofessionalism, his attitude, that's the way he was behaving. That's exactly why he's got hurt. That's why he's got injured the way that he has. That's why maybe this one's a bit, you can't really say that because it's a bit of a bad tackle and a follow through. And, that's the injury. But the reason that he's not sharp enough, he's not quick enough. I mean, Van der Ven couldn't catch Isak when he was at full tilt in Newcastle, right? The reason that, he's got that is a bad tackle and he's caught him bad, but Isak's form has been so shit because of his unprofessionalism and his arrogance. And that's exactly why Liverpool have not seen the best of this centre forward. Now, some people, at Liverpool will be thinking he's going to come good, but it'd be a massive chunk of that fan base right now that are thinking, why did we waste our money on this guy? And you can understand that because if Johan Visser was injured for the whole season at Newcastle, we'd be saying the same thing. Some of our fans were saying, have we wasted 55 million quid on Visser? We have. We didn't like the way Visser behaved at Brentford. I sure as shit didn't. But these Liverpool fans are throw that at us as a judgment to think that we welcome Visser with open arms, even though we completely lambasted Alexander Isak. We didn't. We didn't like the way Visser treated the Brentford fans either. But all Johan Visser has to do now is get his head down, score goals and play well. And if Isak was doing that for Liverpool, they wouldn't be asking questions as to whether they've overpaid 125 million quid for this player. But he looks like his season's probably over. Now, am I going to jump on social media and give him shit? Not really. I've kind of pulled back from social media because it's vile. It's like a fucking skid stain on society, really. It's just got people, baiting people and having fights and arguing with people. And it's just pointless, really. Have a sensible football debate. That's fine. And the sensible football debate here is, am I going to abuse Alexander Isak for getting injured? No. Am I going to rejoice that a 26-year-old lad has had a really bad injury that's affecting his career? No, I'm not. But do I have any sympathy for him? Not really. No, because the way he treated Newcastle United, the way he treated the fan base, I think he's an arsehole. I think he's got absolutely no class about him whatsoever. And he showed that. And do you know what? A lot of the football society would have thought the same thing about Alexander Isak, the way he behaved in the summer. And a lot of them won't be overly fucking bothered that he's injured. They won't be asked. They're not going to fucking wear T-shirts, get well soon, Alex, and all that shit. So Liverpool fans, you reap what you sow. You want to give people shit. You want to wind people up. You want to do little creepy fucking waves and, do medieval posters in the summer. You did Uncle Fester, Tom Thumb looking motherfucker. Do what you want, right? But you reap what you sow, because the Newcastle fans, rightly so now, are having a go at Liverpool and by by association, having a go at Alexander Isak. And if you can't take the heat, then stay out the fucking kitchen. That's the way things work. If you take the piss out of somebody, they're going to retort and come back to you. But in terms of Alexander Isak, it's a season that you could say it's karma, the way he behaved, the way he went on. Not only have Liverpool struggled to see the best of this player, his country has as well. His country's World Cup qualifications are hanging by a thread, and now he's injured. Injury may very well cost him the World Cup qualification. So Alexander Isak's got it all to do to win over Liverpool fans. He'll never be forgiven by the Newcastle fans. Never. Doesn't matter what he comes out and says. He'll retire. He'll look back at his behaviour leaving Newcastle, and he'll regret that. He'll regret that one day when he's a bit older, when he's a bit less full of his own shit, when the hangers-on aren't there, when the contract offers aren't there, when the big money's not there. He'll then look back at that and go, fucking hell, I could have handled that a bit better. I was pretty fucking shit there, wasn't I, really? And you were, Alex. You absolutely were shit. In years to come, when you're a pundit on fucking TV trying to talk about your former clubs, don't be surprised if you get a shit reception when you come back to Newcastle if you're on Amazon or TNT Sport with a microphone under your fucking hand, like a lot of the other former pros do, because you're a shithouse and you always will be. But that was my thoughts on that, guys. I think Newcastle fans have been unfairly attacked for their reaction to this. Do I think it's over the top, as I said before? Yes, I don't think you should be rejoicing that a lad's hurt himself, but it's understandable that they still hate the man and they don't give two fucks about him being hurt. That's the way I stand, guys. But let me know in the comments below what you think about the Alexander Isak injury. Are you bothered? Are you arsed? Like me, you're not going to rejoice about a guy being hurt, but you're not going to shed any tears either that he's hurt. Are you bothered about his career going forward? Do you care if he's a success or not? I don't. I hope he's a massive failure. And I hope Liverpool cut the losses and sell him for half the money that they spent on him. And, it'll be a lesson learned there for Alexander Isak and for Liverpool as well. Don't bully players into releasing, their players too early. And for players themselves as well. You don't know what you got till it's gone. Newcastle was good for Alexander Isak. Alexander Isak was good for Newcastle. We've struggled a bit since he's gone. He's massively struggled since he's left. So this transfer has not worked out for Isak or for Newcastle in many ways. Certainly not worked out for you, Liverpool. So I don't think anybody's won in this transfer at all. The Johan Visser thing, it's not, Brentford haven't really looked back. They've had a cracking season so far. Atara coming has done really well for them. We haven't seen any of Visser yet to really judge whether he's going to be a success or failure. You've seen enough of Alexander Isak now to start asking questions, Liverpool. So that's the way the cookie crumbles. But that was my thoughts on it, guys. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know what your thoughts are. We'll be back with a Manchester United preview. You can watch that bad boy on Christmas Day. I might even chuck a little Santa hat on as well for the festive spirit. But it's a rotten kickoff for Newcastle fans. And I'll be definitely telling you my piece about that. But thanks for watching. Remember, as I said at the start, like and subscribe. Help get us to the next milestone. Hopefully, we'll get there early on in the new year. I'm not ambitious enough to think I'm going to get there before Christmas. Christ almighty. It's only 3 days away. But thanks for watching, guys. Have a belter. And we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Heroes celebrate. They have done it.